Well, welcome to another episode of For Another Day podcast. This is episode 104 for Friday, January 14th, 2022. Today we're diving into talking about the dignity of life. Did you know that January is the celebration of life month? Not only are we looking at all life as being sacred or being of worth, but also we're looking at today human trafficking, and then jumping into a research study talking about chaotic households and how it undermines children's development for the future. So let's jump in. Well, as we look at January being the celebration of life, really it begins January 1st. And a lot of times we start looking at what is it that we want to change in our lives. And we had a previous episode, you could probably check that out up above, that talked about New Year's resolutions and what those things we want to change and those blessings that we look at rather than looking at the negatives. But as we go ahead and explore the month of January, we look at the sanctity or celebration of life. We look at also human trafficking that doesn't get celebrated but gets recognized this month. But really, when we start looking at it, what and how much do we establish value to life? So let's truly dive in. Let's look at some of the statistics that are out there, namely for human trafficking. I really wanted to spend some time on that today because it becomes one of those topics that is so very taboo, because we automatically think of child abduction and sex trafficking. But truly, human trafficking is really so much more. Truly, 64% of all human trafficking is for labor. 19% is for sexual exploits, while 17% is actually for state labor exploits. Now you might be wondering, okay, so what exactly does that mean? Well, some of the top countries out there that exploit for human trafficking: Pakistan, Thailand, China, India. I mean, India has some of the highest rates, unfortunately, for human trafficking. 14 million out of the almost 20 plus million that are trafficked. And this is, of course, remember, the reported, which we know is so much higher than that. You know, the 20 million plus that come each and every year through human trafficking and exploitation, 5.5 million of that is children. Oftentimes we think it's reversed, that it's the more percentages for adults, but it's actually for adults living in slavery. So one of the things that, as we look at some of the high traffic areas that you'll see that come up in statistics are California, Florida, California, and those corridors that move from, I-10, because you'll see a large exploit in the Houston area, and you'll see a large exploit in Florida. But actually, Florida, Georgia, Ohio, Delaware, California, and Missouri have the highest percentage in population for that, starting at 4.8% per 100,000, going all the way down to 3.78% at 100,000. But remember, one thing about the podcast, I always try to encourage you to read deeper into those articles that we come across, those statistics that we come across, because yes, As Florida has 4.8% per 100,000, that leads to almost 1,300 a year. They have almost a population of 27 million. Now, even though California would rank fourth on the list because they're at 3.8 per 100,000, but because of their population center, we're looking at 1,482. Now, Missouri coming in right under California with 3.78 per 100,000. Now, they only have 6 million. So we're only looking at 227,000. Now, 227,000 should be zero. But that's where you really need to be careful as you start reading headlines that come across your phone or across your computer, or that you read actually still in print, if you still read in print. Because, as Delaware is ranked number 4, 3.84 per 100,000, they have under 1 million in population, so that's 37. So remember, keep all these statistics in mind and take it 2 notches deeper to really try to explain the basics of where it's coming from. Now, of course, we wouldn't want any, but people ask, well, why is Ohio number 3 in the percentages? And a lot of it becomes because of corridors, moving and trafficking people in locations. And it's so unfortunate. And that's why there's been a lot of task force work and a lot of work. I mean, it was back in 2000 with Clinton here in the United States that the TVPA, the act, was put in place against child trafficking and against what was happening. Because on average for child trafficking, we're looking between 12 and 14 as their starting age for street work, which is so unfortunate. But, keep in mind, it's the traffickers and the pimps and the exploiters that we really want to try to target for this to end. As much as we want to help and to get victims out of these exploitations, we also need to look at how we need to take care of those that are breaking the law. I mean, 75%, of course, of the traffickers are male. 75%, 25% is female. 7 out of 10 are African American. 2 out of 10 are Caucasian. And the last 10% is mixed. So, as we start looking at this, it's also this consideration that exploitation happens within the family. And that's why I included the journal article today in the second part of this podcast, because it really starts talking about the family unit and talking about how important it is in the development for the child. 60% of victims know their trafficker. That's 60%, 6 out of 10. And the mother is 2 times higher than the father for that exploitation. Now, some of it comes culturally when you start looking at foreign countries and the use of forced labor and young brides and young families and the such. But remember, we're talking about exploitation here. And if we truly are looking at what is the sanctity of life, no one should be in slavery. No one should be exploited, regardless of their sex, regardless of the country that they're in. And so there is so much work to be done, so much work to be done in terms of enforcement, so much work to be done in terms of laws, so much work to be done for victimizations, so much work that's out there. So I really want you to take a look this month at some of those nonprofits that are trying to work to help with human trafficking. Maybe some of them will pull on your heartstrings and truly become one of those that could use your help this year. Because as the pandemic continues, so does exploitation. We know domestic violence went up, but we know exploitation still continues. So please, 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 whatever you can do to help find those groups that need your help the most. So as we celebrate life this month of January, as we're eating healthier, as we have New Year's resolutions, as on January 11th, that was the celebration and recognition to end human trafficking. We have a March for Life in the United States coming up. We're looking at the value and worth of all those that are here, regardless of race, regardless of creed. Each person does have value, does have worth, does have the dignity that is associated with it. Looking for a snack or a fresh nut to cook with? I'm a Nut has a variety of delicious nuts to choose from. Walnuts, almonds, cashews, pumpkins, and much more. All gluten-free, non-GMO, kosher, paleo, keto-friendly, and a money-back guarantee. Click the link below to order yours today. Okay, so the journal article today comes out of Post, posting up on December 17th, 2021. Headline reads, Chaotic Households Undermine Children's Development of Executive Functioning Through Less Responsive Parenting. So as many of us would do, whether we're on our phones scrolling or just trying to check an extra news article, we would look at that title and go, okay, skip, next one. We wouldn't really truly try to focus on what is involved here, let alone the intricacies of this study, because this was a multi-method approach that they went ahead and took to find out about the functioning and how it impairs children's growth. Now, first and foremost, let's take a look, because it talks about executive functioning, and many people don't even know what that is comprised of. So executive functioning skills are comprised of a set of cognitive processing skills necessary to learn, work, live, and function on a daily basis. And you might still going, I still don't get it, Rick. I still don't understand what executive functioning is. So this is the part of the brain that actually hosts a lot of different developments. So impulse control, so thinking before acting, that's part of the executive functioning. Emotional control, that keeping those feelings and emotions in check, that's executive functioning. Flexible thinking, so being able to adjust to behavior for unexpected changes, this is executive functioning. Working memory, to try to keep track of information while truly using it, this is executive functioning. Self-monitoring, this is that self-awareness of how one is doing in the moment. This again, executive functioning. Planning and prioritizing, being able to set and meet goals. This is, once again, executive functioning. Task initiation. This is taking actions to get things started on tasks. So that initial push. This is executive functioning. And organization, keeping track of things physically and mentally. All these 8 parts are skills in the executive functioning. All huge developmental growth areas for a child to take on. When we think about it, they don't yet know how to truly organize. Even for teens, there's that impulse control, even with teens, that self-monitoring and self-awareness. And so we look at this study, and it's incorporating a lot of data, a lot of information here to try to track and to see if chaotic households truly change this functioning here. And so that's what they went ahead and looked at. Now, this published actually came out 22nd of September 2021 in the BMC Psychology journaling. But like I said, on SciPost, it's posted up for a little bit later on. So once again, household chaos negatively influences parenting practices. But few studies, however, have truly examined the role of parenting and the association between chaos and child executive functions. So this was a sample of 128 school-aged children. Their mean, so right in the middle, was 61 months. So this is younger children and their mothers. The study was direct and indirect effects of household chaos on their functionings, and they used different assessments. They used behavioral observations, they used questionnaires, and they even did a video home tour to see just what the chaos looked like in the household. So not just reported by the parent or observed of the child and parent, but also what that chaos looked like in the household. So now we go a step further and we look at, well, what are you talking about chaos? And what does that truly mean? And so they conceptualized chaos as probably as 2 dimensions here. One as disorganization, so clutter, ambient noise, crowding, lack of structure, and instability, so frequent changes in residence, household occupants, and routines. So they put these together as indicators for household chaos. So lo and behold, they have an important takeaway from this, because from the study, there is evidence that household chaos is linked to lower executive functioning in children. It makes it difficult for children to regulate their emotions, for staying focused on tasks, for making decisions. And this has implications for later academic success or even their ability to associate and socialize with peers. However, they also found from their study that and other research is establishing that regular family routines, bedtime, mealtime, rules, it's important, and they can help provide structure and stability for a child. But as Andrews, who is the key author to this study, really wanted us to know is that research in household chaos and its effects on children and their family, as it continues to grow, it's pertinent to informing future programs that they're tailored to individual needs of families and trying to promote greater stability and order with the home and fostering healthy development and knowing what those trajectories, knowing what those benchmarks or milestones are for the children and what is age appropriate. So you might be saying, okay, that's great, Rick, but how does this apply to me? Well, one of the things that's key and important here is that we need to focus on that development of a healthy family, whether it is single parent or two parent households. How do you develop that healthy family? How do you develop a structure and a routine that doesn't necessarily change each and every day, that kids thrive on? This is why with school and with the pandemic, why kids had such problems, because they were used to that routine. They knew where to go, how to act, how to behave with the teacher. And all too often in the counseling session, we'll get parents that say they'll behave for the teacher, but when I'm with them. And so we really look at, well, what is it that you've established as rules for the household? Oh, we don't really do those. Well, what have you done to establish a routine in the household in the evening? What time is dinner for the family? Oh, we don't even do a family dinner, just as it goes. Oh, okay. And so it's like, well, are you willing to try? Are you willing to do things just a little bit differently here to see if that makes a change? And so whether you're going for counseling or whether you're going for family relational coaching, whatever it might be, you look at those ways to how to make the family grow healthfully. And so here, once again, I'm encouraging you, examine those things in your family lives that would go ahead. And even if you don't have a family yet, look back at your own, because those are the opportunities to say, woulda, coulda, shoulda. It could have been different. And it's not a place blame for the parents, but it's like, what would you change to make things different? How would you make that? And it's a great opportunity for young couples to discuss, what would you make differently in your family than what you have experienced? And even for young families, what would you make difference when our child isn't 2 anymore and they're 5 or they're 9 or they're 12? And so it's in exploring these things that truly leads to better communication, hopefully. If not, get some help. And to truly explore what can make a difference, because this is about the children's health, their executive functioning. This is brain functioning here. And we don't want to impede this at such a young age when there's still such a growth potential going on. So once again, I encourage you to look at those moments in life, examine them, nurture them, and grow stronger families, grow stronger relationships, so you have a better tomorrow. So one final note for today. I really want to hear from you, the viewers. I want to know what questions you have, what type of podcast you're interested in hearing, those that are of importance to you. And so with that being said, I'd love to have an interactional segment here on the podcast where I'll answer questions. In the future, maybe do a live stream. But for right now, just truly an interactional time when I can take a sip of coffee or tea or water and sit down and just answer the questions at hand. Maybe it's about relationships. Maybe it's about communication. Maybe it's about one of the studies that I didn't quite explain enough for you. Now, this isn't a chance to do coaching or counseling over the internet. This is just a chance to give you an opportunity to voice your needs and what you would love to see. So with that being said, take time to go on to YouTube and make a comment, or find the postings on our website, foranotherday.com, under the contact tab, or in the chat bubble. Leave me a message. I would love to know what you're thinking. So I want to leave you today with a quote from B.F. Skinner, a famous psychologist, behaviorist, that said, "A failure is not always a mistake. It may simply be the best one that you can do under the circumstances. The real mistake is to stop trying."